Hey guys, welcome back. Sorry I missed a couple days. I just kept running into issues and uh yeah, just a rough couple of days. But yesterday ended off really well. Valentine's Day, hung out with my husband's family. It was great. So it was a good night. So I'm gonna tell you quickly what happened at the Valentine's Day dinner slash fundraiser for the youth of the church I go to. And then we'll jump into today's chapters because they are a little bit longer today. So, um, basically, what happened was um, the night before. I didn't mention this the other day because I didn't realize it at the time. But the enemy was like attacking like me and my husband a lot, like doing anything it could to prevent us from going to the dinner, from and it wasn't so much the dinner. It was the enemy was trying to prevent us from staying for the talk that the pastor was going to say. So basically, the night before, my father-in-law was the one making the food for the event, and I see he has shrimp, and I hate seafood. I don't like it. I never have. I've tried shrimp. I don't like it. And so I was like, oh, are you gonna make anything else? And he was like, no, just this, and then some pasta salad and some rice. And I was like, okay, no big deal. It's not the end of the world. I can eat before I go or get something after. But then I was like, oh man, I don't know. So I'm telling my husband about this at midnight after my daughter goes to bed, and he's like, well, it's $50. Do you really want to go and spend that money and then, not eat? And I was like, well, it's for a fundraiser. And anyway, so he convinced me, and he was like, yeah, let's just eat and hang out at home. And I was like, okay. Went to sleep, woke up in the morning. I don't know what happened while I was asleep, but I woke up like, no, we gotta go. I wanna go. I wanna go. So then he's like, okay, fine, let's go. So then I was like, I'll just eat before. It's not a big deal. And then I'll get some food on the way home or something. No big deal. So then everything was great. I made the video the other day telling you guys I was excited about it. And then after that, it's like everything just started to go downhill. Like I was almost had a meltdown with what I was gonna wear. My husband and I started bickering and arguing about stupid stuff. I was having issues with my daughter and her outfit and this and that, and just it was one thing after another. And my husband and I are just at each other's throats about nothing, basically. And then we get to the dinner. It's outside. It's cold and windy. The sun is right in our faces. It's freezing. And then they bring dinner, and I didn't even eat it. But I wasn't hungry, so it wasn't a big deal. It was just more like I was just bummed because I love my father-in-law's food, and of all the events that I finally go to, he makes shrimp. I was kind of bummed because I love his food. But anyways, and then my husband kept saying, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Like we were just sitting there, and like probably 90% of the time, my husband and I weren't even talking. We were just sitting at the table alone, just sitting there because we were like at each other's throats. And something inside me was like, no, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. Stay for the talk that's going to happen by the pastor. And so that voice was so strong, that feeling was so strong that I was like, okay, fine. So then finally, the pastor's like, okay, we're going to go inside for a lesson, but he says it in Spanish. So then my husband hears it and he's like, oh man, we should have left. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, they're going to do a lesson. I'm so mad that we came here and I'm going to be stuck doing this. And I was like, oh, well, let's just hear what he has to say. Like, I wanted to hear what he had to say. So we're all bringing the chairs inside into like a living room area, and they're like in rows all the way up to the front. And guess who's sitting in the front? Me and my husband. So that really even more made him mad. And then something inside me clicked, and I was like, this is like not like nothing's wrong today. Nothing's wrong. We are blessed. We have a roof over our head. Everything's great. So why are all these little tiny things being blown out of proportion? And then I finally realized that it was spiritual warfare. We were being attacked because the enemy did not want us to stay for the talk that was going to happen. And so once that finally clicked, I was like, okay, we have to stay for this talk because clearly it's something that's really going to help me and my husband get closer to God. And um, I was just like, we have to stay. And sure enough, we stayed. It was a little rough the first couple minutes. My husband was like antsy. I wanted to cry and leave. Like, I just wanted to cry and just walk off in front of everyone. But I was like, no, I can't make a scene. So I just sat there and stayed. And my mother-in-law translated for me next to me. And then I also get hip pain sometimes. And my hip was killing me. But I was like, no, I have to stay. I have to stay. Like, it's clear that we need to stay and listen to this. So I did. And eventually I didn't need to cry anymore. Eventually my hip pain went away completely and I was fine. My husband stopped being antsy and he just started listening, and instead of fidgeting around and sighing and everything. And by the end of it, we felt much better. And I even cried a little bit at the end during the prayer part. And my husband like apologized for being like mean. And um anyways, it was so crazy because I just like, you know, it was just so crazy to see how much the enemy was attacking us to keep us from staying for that talk, because the closer we got to the talk, the worse the attacks got. And even after the talk started, we were still being attacked. And then nothing was working though, and we weren't leaving our seats. So I think the enemy finally was like, okay, like I'm not winning. And so the enemy finally backed off. And then when the pastor started talking, because they had a guest pastor and his wife, and they started talking and everything. And then as they started talking and more things started happening, and, you know, God's word and everything started to come, it's like I felt like the darkness and the attacks kind of just subsided slowly. And it was just wild. I couldn't believe it. And my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, they all noticed it. They were like, yeah, like we could tell that you guys were like being like attacked, like. And I was just like, wow, like I could not believe that, because my husband believes in God and the Bible and everything. um but not like he's not putting any effort into his relationship with God right now, and I'm trying to get him back to God, um just so that he can feel better, and then also God can help us, you know, improve our marriage and our life and our family and everything. And I can see how much the enemy is trying to keep my husband from getting back to God. And it's just so wild to watch it and just see it. And I try to tell my husband, I'm like, oh, yeah, like that's the enemy trying to convince you this, or that, or blah, blah, blah. And he'll be like, no. And I'm like, yes, like, you know, that veil that I've talked about before that's been lifted off my eyes. I feel like my husband had a little bit of that veil on his eyes, and he doesn't completely see what's happening and how the enemy is keeping him from God. And I'm, you know, trying to bring him to God with me along the way, that as I get closer to God. And, you know, we're making progress. It's slow but sure. But that talk at the Valentine's Day dinner was a big step in the right direction. And then he actually went to church the following day. So that was also great. And then, you know, we're making steps. So I just wanted to share that story, because if you ever feel like just one thing after another is happening and going wrong, take a step back and see, like, are you being spiritually attacked? You know, just, and if you are, take that as a sign that whatever the enemy is trying to prevent you to get to, whether it's church or an event or someone or a talk or something, there's a reason the enemy is trying to prevent you from going there. So you have to push through these attacks and just keep your eye on the ball and get to whatever it is that the enemy is trying to keep you from, because, you know, there's a reason the enemy is attacking you so much. So I'm so glad we stayed and we pushed through and we were able to stay for that talk. But yeah, it was just wild. I just could not believe that. Like, I was shocked to see it and realize like that was what was happening. So it was pretty crazy. But anyways, let's get into today's chapters and get going.
Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, and make him afraid. And all the people who are with him will flee, and I will strike only the king. Then I will bring back all the people to you. When all return except the man whom you seek, all the people will be at peace." And the saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel.
So sorry, I have to tell you guys, when I mentioned my hip was in pain and it was hard for me to sit, I had no pain the entire day. The pain in my hip didn't start until I started getting ready to go to the Valentine's Day dinner. And then it progressively got worse and worse and worse. And then it was at its peak of pain when I was sitting there in the front row listening to the pastors talk. And there was a couple times where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this talk because I'm in so much pain. But I pushed through, and then eventually the pain went away, guys. I'm not even joking. As the talk went on and on and on, and I really was like listening and focusing, eventually by the end of it, I wasn't in pain anymore. So I'm just saying, like, you know, you can call it a coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidences. I think that was part of, like, I don't know how, and I could be wrong, but I just think that's too much of a coincidence. Just saying. So sorry to interrupt again. I will stop interrupting.
Then Absalom said, "Now call Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he says too." And when Hushai came to Absalom, Absalom spoke to him, saying, "Ahithophel has spoken in this manner. Shall we do as he says? If not, speak up." So Hushai said to Absalom, "The advice that Ahithophel has given is not good at this time. For," said Hushai, "you know your father and his men, that they are mighty men, and they are enraged in their minds, like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field. And your father is a man of war, and will not camp with the people. Surely by now he is hidden in some pit, or in some other place. And it will be, when some of them are overthrown at the first, that whoever hears it will say, 'There is a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom.' And even he who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt completely. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. Therefore I advise that all Israel be fully gathered to you, from Dan to Beersheba, like the sand that is by the sea for multitude, and that you go to battle in person. So we will come upon him in some place where he may be found, and we will fall on him as the dew falls on the ground. And of him and all the men who are with him, there shall not be left so much as one. Moreover, if he has withdrawn into a city, then all Israel shall bring ropes to that city, and we will pull it into the river, until there is not one small stone found there." So Absalom and all the men of Israel said, "The advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel." For the Lord had purposed to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. Then Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, "Thus and so Ahithophel advised Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus and so I have advised. Now therefore, Send quickly and tell David, saying, Do not spend this night in the plains of the wilderness, but speedily cross over, lest the king and all the people who are with him be swallowed up. Now Jonathan and Ahimaaz stayed at Enrogel, for they dared not be seen coming into the city. So a female servant would come and tell them, and they would go and tell King David. Nevertheless, a lad saw them and told Absalom. But both of them went away quickly and came to a man's house in Bahurim, who had a well in his court, and they went down into it. Then the woman took and spread a covering over the well's mouth, and spread ground grain on it, and the thing was not known. And when Absalom's servants came to the woman at the house, they said, Where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? So the woman said to them, They have gone over the water brook. And when they had searched and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. Now it came to pass, after they had departed, that they came up out of the well, and went and told King David, and said to David, Arise and cross over the water quickly, for thus has Ahithophel advised against you. So David and all the people who were with him arose and crossed over the Jordan. By morning light, not one of them was left who had not gone over the Jordan. Now when Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he saddled a donkey and arose and went home to his house, to his city. Then he put his household in order, and hanged himself, and died, and he was buried in his father's tomb.
I don't understand that. I don't understand why he hung himself. Like, why did he kill himself? Because King David didn't follow his advice. I don't understand why he went to that, like, extreme.
Then David went to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed over the Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. And Absalom made Amasa captain of the army instead of Joab. This Amasa was the son of a man whose name was Jithra, an Israelite, who had gone into Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister of Zeruiah, Joab's mother. So Israel and Absalom encamped in the land of Gilead. Now it happened, when David had come to Mahanaim, that Shobai, the son of Nahash from Rabbah, of the people of Ammon, Machir, the son of Ammiel, from Lodebar, and Barzillai, the Gileadite from Rogelim, brought beds and basins, earthen vessels and wheat, barley and flour, parched grain and beans, lentils and parched seeds, honey and curds, sheep and cheese of the herd, for David and the people who were with him to eat. For they said, The people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. And David numbered the people who were with him, and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. Then David sent out 1/3 of the people under the hand of Joab, 1/3 under the hand of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and 1/3 under the hand of Ittai, the Gittite. And the king said to the people, I also will surely go out with you myself. But the people answered, You shall not go out, for if we flee away, they will not care about us, nor if half of us die, will they care about us. But you are worth 10,000 of us now, for you are now more help to us in the city. Then the king said to them, Whatever seems best to you, I will do. So the king stood beside the gate, and all the people went out by hundreds and by thousands. Now the king had commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, saying, Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains orders concerning Absalom. So the people went out into the field of battle against Israel. And the battle was in the woods of Ephraim. The people of Israel were overthrown there before the servants of David, and a great slaughter of 20,000 took place there that day. For the battle there was scattered over the face of the whole countryside, and the woods devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Then Absalom met the servants of David. Absalom rode on a mule, the mule went under the thick boughs of a great terebinth tree, and his head caught in the terebinth. So he was left hanging between heaven and earth, and the mule which was under him went on. Now a certain man saw it, and told Joab, and said, I just saw Absalom hanging in a terebinth tree. So Joab said to the man who told him, You just saw him, and why did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a belt. But the man said to Joab, Though I were to receive 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, I would not raise my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Beware, lest anyone touch the young man Absalom. Otherwise, I would have dealt falsely against my own life. For there is nothing hidden from the king, and you yourself would have set yourself against me. Then Joab said, I cannot linger with you. And he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through Absalom's heart, while he was still alive in the midst of the terebinth tree. And 10 young men who bore Joab's armor surrounded Absalom and struck and killed him. So Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab held back the people. And they took Absalom and cast him into a large pit in the woods, and laid a very large heap of stones over him. Then all Israel fled, everyone to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up a pillar for himself, which is in the king's valley. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. He called the pillar after his own name, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument. Then Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said, Let me run now and take the news to the king, how the Lord has avenged him of his enemies. And Joab said to him, You shall not take the news this day, for you shall take the news another day. But today you shall take no news, because the king's son is dead. Then Joab said to the Cushite, Go, tell the king what you have seen. So the Cushite bowed himself to Joab and ran. And Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said again to Joab, But whatever happens, please let me also run after the Cushite. So Joab said, Why will you run, my son, since you have no news ready? But whatever happens, he said, let me run. So he said to him, Run. Then Ahimaaz ran by way of the plain, and outran the Cushite. Now David was sitting between the 2 gates, and the watchman went up to the roof over the gate, to the wall, lifted his eyes and looked, and there was a man running alone. Then the watchman cried out and told the king. And the king said, If he is alone, there is news in his mouth. And he came rapidly and drew near. Then the watchman saw another man running, and the watchman called to the gatekeeper and said, There is another man running alone. And the king said, He also brings news. So the watchman said, I think the running of the first is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. And the king said, He is a good man, and comes with good news. So Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, All is well. Then he bowed down with his face to the earth before the king, and said, Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hand against my lord the king. The king said, Is the young man Absalom safe? Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant, and me your servant, I saw a great tumult, but I did not know what it was about. And the king said, Turn aside and stand here. So he turned aside and stood still. Just then the Cushite came, and the Cushite said, There is good news, my lord the king. For the Lord has avenged you this day of all those who rose against you. And the king said to the Cushite, Is the young man Absalom safe? So the Cushite answered, May the enemies of my lord the king, and all who rise against you to do harm, be like that young man. Then the king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, he said thus, "O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died in your place. O Absalom, my son, my son." And Joab was told, "Behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom." So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people. For the people heard it said that day, "The king is grieved for his son." And the people stole back into the city that day, as people who are ashamed steal away when they flee in battle. But the king covered his face, and the king cried out with a loud voice, "O my son Absalom, O Absalom, my son, my son." Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, "Today you have disgraced all your servants who today have saved your life, the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives and the lives of your concubines, in that you love your enemies and hate your friends. For you have declared today that you regard neither princes nor servants. For today I perceive that if Absalom had lived and all of us had died today, then it would have pleased you well. Now therefore, arise, go out and speak comfort to your servants. For I swear by the Lord, if you do not go out, not one will stay with you this night. And that will be worse for you than all the evil that has befallen you from your youth until now." Then the king arose and sat in the gate. And they told all the people, saying, "There is the king, sitting in the gate." So all the people came before the king, for every one of Israel had fled to his tent. Now all the people were in a dispute throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "The king saved us from the hand of our enemies. He delivered us from the hand of the Philistines, and now he has fled from the land because of Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. Now therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing back the king?" So King David sent to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, saying, "Speak to the elders of Judah, saying, why are you the last to bring the king back to his house, since the words of all Israel have come to the king, to his very house? You are my brethren. You are my bone and my flesh. Why then are you the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? God do so to me, and more also, if you are not commander of the army before me continually in place of Joab." So he swayed the hearts of all the men of Judah, just as the heart of one man, so that they sent this word to the king, "Return, you and all your servants." Then the king returned and came to the Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to go to meet the king, to escort the king across the Jordan. And Shimei, the son of Gera, a Benjamite, who was from Bahurim, hurried and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, and Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons, and his 20 servants with him. And they went over the Jordan before the king. Then a ferry boat went across to carry over the king's household, and to do what he thought good. Now Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king when he had crossed the Jordan. Then he said to the king, "Do not let my lord impute iniquity to me, or remember what wrong your servant did on the day that my lord the king left Jerusalem, that the king should take it to heart. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. Therefore here I am, the first to come today of all the house of Joseph, to go down to meet my lord the king." But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, "Shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed. And David said, What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For do I not know that today I am king over Israel? Therefore the king said to Shimei, You shall not die. And the king swore to him. Now Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king, and he had not cared for his feet, nor trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes, from the day the king departed until the day he returned in peace. So it was, when he had come to Jerusalem to meet the king, that the king said to him, Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? And he answered, My lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go to the king, because your servant is lame. And he has slandered your servant to my lord, the king. But my lord, the king, is like the angel of God. Therefore, do what is good in your eyes. For all my father's house were but dead men before my lord, the king. Yet you set your servant among those who eat at your own table. Therefore, what right have I still to cry out any more to the king? So the king said to him, Why do you speak any more of your matters? I have said, You and Ziba divide the land. Then Mephibosheth said to the king, Rather, let him take it all, inasmuch as my lord the king has come back in peace to his own house. And Barzillai, the Gileadite, came down from Rogelim, and went across the Jordan with the king, to escort him across the Jordan. Now Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old, and he had provided the king with supplies while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very rich man. And the king said to Barzillai, Come across with me, and I will provide for you while you are with me in Jerusalem. But Barzillai said to the king, How long have I to live, that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am today 80 years old. Can I discern between the good and bad? Can your servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear any longer the voice of singing men and singing women? Why then should your servant be a further burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way across the Jordan with the king. And why should the king repay me with such a reward? Please, let your servant turn back again, that I may die in my own city, near the grave of my father and mother. But here is your servant Kimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king, and do for him what seems good to you. And the king answered, Kimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him what seems good to you. Now whatever you request of me, I will do for you. Then all the people went over the Jordan, and when the king had crossed over, the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own place. Now the king went on to Gilgal, and Kimham went on with him, and all the people of Judah escorted the king, and also half the people of Israel. Just then all the men of Israel came to the king, and said to the king, Why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen you away, and brought the king, his household, and all David's men with him across the Jordan? So all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, Because the king is a close relative of ours. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we ever eaten at the king's expense, or has he given us any gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, We have 10 shares in the king. Therefore we also have more right to David than you. Why then do you despise us? Were we not the first to advise bringing back our king? Yet the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel.
Guys, I don't know. I feel like lost with those chapters. I mean, I kind of was following along in the beginning, and then towards the end, I kind of got lost and was like, what's happening? And I think what's throwing me off a lot too, there's so many names. And I'm like, okay, like, and some of them are mentioned multiple times, but I'm like, okay, I'm like trying to remember, where did this person come from? Where did this person come from? No, okay, now this is a new name. Who is this? You know, and it's like, there's so many names and so many places and tribes and people, and it's just like, oh, it's a lot. It's hard. And then the chapters were like extra long today, so that also didn't help. But like, I don't know. Tomorrow's shorter chapters, and um, I still haven't watched the summary on Bible Project on YouTube yet about Second Samuel book. I need to do that. I keep forgetting. I've had a lot going on, but like I said, I don't put too much pressure on myself because, you know, I am trying. I'm doing the best I can, and even though I can't expect myself to understand every little thing in the Bible and every story in the Bible the first time around. I just feel like that's unrealistic and not fair to like put that pressure on myself, you know? So, um, I think I'm just gonna keep chugging along and try to understand the best I can. So, okay, guys. Well, I will hopefully see you guys tomorrow. I have been having some issues um, with just making these videos. I'm trying to be consistent every day, but it just sometimes things happen and it's just difficult. And then I have issues with the app, and it's just, you know, life. So hopefully I see you guys tomorrow, and I hope you guys have a great night.